an honor to be able to share with the steering committee some information from Missourians who are leading experts on entrepreneurship and the innovation economy. A lot of you are probably thinking, what is that? Maybe new terms. Well, we'll get into that obviously in the panel. As Mike said, my name is Jason Hall, and I'm the Executive Director of the Missouri Technology Corporation. Before getting into my comments, I want to just make sure to have introduced our panel. First, we have Vicki Gonzalez, the President and CEO of the NIDA Center for Scientific Enterprise. Next, joined by Dr. Mike Nichols, who's Vice President, Office of Research and Economic Development for the University of Missouri System. Both Vicki and Mike are actually board members of the MTC as well. Next, we have Kelly Gillespie, Executive Director of the Missouri Biotechnology Association. And finally, we're joined by Dr. Dan Getman, who is the President of the Kansas City Area Life Sciences Institute. And Dan joined the Institute from Pfizer, where he was Vice President of Pfizer's Global Research and Development Team and the Director of Pfizer's Chesterfield campus here in Missouri. Detailed bios on those panelists are included in the information, so you can learn more about them, but all very accomplished individuals with both public and private sector experience. From my experience, and from my perspective, when you take it back to its core, there are three basic strategies for economic development that, to keep it simple, I often analogize to a stool and the three legs of the stool. That are recruitment, expansion, and that third leg is entrepreneurship, or creating new Missouri-based businesses. In the prior panel that you heard from with Chris, they talked about the first two, and that was really their emphasis on recruitment and expansion. This panel is going to focus on that third leg of the stool, and that is entrepreneurship and creating new businesses. To be sure, though, I think to echo the comments of the earlier panel, it's my view that all three of those strategies and all three legs of that stool are critically important if we're going to have a well-balanced economic growth strategy for the state of Missouri. The Kauffman Foundation, which you've heard a lot about today, located over in Kansas City, is the world's most respected policy organization on entrepreneurship. As an interesting note of history, created by the generosity of a Missouri entrepreneur, Ewing Kauffman from Garden City, Missouri, who created the Marion Laboratories Company. Kauffman released a study just this month that, backed up by data, shows startup businesses overwhelmingly account for the net new jobs that are added to the U.S. economy. And they encouraged policymakers and governments to target economic incentives towards startups and young firms. So how does Missouri fare in the startup category? That's the obvious question. As you heard from Mike Downing when he was speaking earlier, he said Kauffman ranks us at 44th in the economic dynamism category. I actually used to use that stat, Mike, but after really torturing dynamism in too many public speaking comments, I started looking at Kauffman's entrepreneurial activity rating, but unfortunately Missouri came in 49th out of 50 there. In the new rankings released in May, Missouri jumped to 32, so we were proud of that improvement. I think some of the things you'll hear about today that contributed to that entrepreneurship goes back to a one-time commitment the state made of roughly $15 million to invest in our entrepreneurial infrastructure and innovation economy. But that money is soon to be gone. Of the three legs of the stool, though, entrepreneurship has largely not been a focus of state economic development policy, certainly not compared to the other two. And it's understandable why. If you've got a new entrepreneur out there, maybe adding 2, 3, 4 jobs at one time, they just don't grab the headlines like a major business relocation that's able to announce 500 jobs at one time. So those entrepreneurs really struggle to get that attention, and therefore the attention of the policymakers. But we know that a focused strategy on entrepreneurship works over the long haul. When I was testifying before the Senate committee last year, I did some research to look at a little bit about the history of the largest companies that are still actually headquartered in the state of Missouri. And my research turned out that 7 of the 10 largest companies that still have their world headquarters here were all created by individual entrepreneurs around the turn of the century. Entrepreneurs experimented with the new technologies of that era, and in doing so, ushered in an economy that still defines Missouri 100 years later. Take, for example, the examples are throughout the state, the Meston brothers, who at the turn of the century, had a vision for the challenge of that time, which was developing a small, reliable electric motor. That vision of those two entrepreneurs 100 years ago turned into the technology powerhouse that is Emerson Electric, now employing 120,000 people around the world. You've got similar histories rooted in companies like Monsanto, Leggett & Platt down in Carthage, H&R Block in Kansas City. Those similar entrepreneurial stories underlie those pillars of our corporate community today. At the turn of the century, of course, though, Missouri had natural advantages to entrepreneurial talent and the kind of capital that it takes to grow young, new, high-tech firms. Among other things, Missouri was one of the largest states in the country, anchored by St. Louis, which was the fourth largest city in the country, and our communities throughout Missouri defined the natural frontier of our country's growth and prosperity. We've lost some of that edge, if we're going to be honest with ourselves. Our discussion of the innovation economy today focuses not just on entrepreneurship generally, which we think is valuable and obviously needs to increase in Missouri. Retail shops, restaurants, doctors' offices, those kind of businesses employ a lot of Missourians, and they no doubt enhance our quality of life. But our focus today is on high-tech, high-growth businesses that have the potential to generate a substantial number of high-paying Missouri-based jobs. We want the Leggett & Platts and Emersons of tomorrow. That is the innovation economy and entrepreneurship that we're talking about now. At a high level, this strategy is really based upon entrepreneurs taking some research that's done in a lab, like that right here at the University of Missouri, or from a tinkering mind in a garage, and turning that idea into a business. And to foster that kind of economic growth successfully and grow companies like Apple and Google and Amgen, there's a lot of complexity about the kind of infrastructure and capital that you need. It's not the kind of capital that you can go get from a commercial bank, but it's rather the kind that focuses on early stage capital that you get from an angel investment network, a seed capital fund, or a venture capitalist. You've probably heard about some of the best examples of the best executed innovation economic growth strategies around the country without really knowing it. Silicon Valley in California, the Research Park Triangle in North Carolina, Route 128 corridor in Boston. Here in Missouri, at the turn of the century, it might have been reliable electric motors, but today it's biotech firms and products that are being developed at large and small enterprises in disciplines such as plant science, animal health, medical device, and other high-tech areas such as information technology and applied engineering. You're going to hear about that today from these panelists, and you will no doubt hear about that when you engage in those regional discussions across the state. The Missouri Technology Corporation, the organization I'm proud to lead, is the not-for-profit corporation created by the Missouri General Assembly and is charged by law with leading and executing the state programs to help build that entrepreneurship and that innovation economy. I'll say I joined this administration about a year ago. I came out of the Bryan Cave Law Firm in St. Louis. And a comment that Randy Allen made really struck me, because I came out of an urban area and your own personal biases, you presume that a lot of that innovation is taking place in just those large urban areas. But as the governor said, one of the joys of a job like this is you get to engage with Missourians across the state. And I'll tell you, the thing that has struck me the most is how powerful this strategy can be in rural Missouri. An example of that, earlier this year, the MTC led an effort with the community of Mexico. They have been struck hard by losses in manufacturing jobs, and they said, you know what, we want to be a part of the new economy, we need some help. And they had a vision there for putting in a plant science center to take a part of that historic strength they have in growing soybeans in Audrain County and get into the value-added products that those soybeans can be turned into in an innovation economy. I'll tell you, an amazing team of the MTC, the University of Missouri, and the City of Mexico came together to help that community execute on that vision. And when over 300 people show up for a rainy day on a groundbreaking for a $15 million facility, you know you're tapping into something special. So this is a strategy I view that if you're a small community that has a challenge getting on that site selector list, if you give that community the tools to grow their own businesses. It just happened this week. A small entrepreneur from Lebanon, Missouri. He's just trying to get a product to market and needed some help. May not be on a site selector list, but he feels like if he can get some help and get that product into market, he can help be a part of growing Lebanon, Missouri again.